Welcome, everybody, to a vaguely familiar podcast. My name is Bashaar, and with me is
Nazar,
my co-host.
married man's.
Today on the podcast, we had my first-year calculus professor, Ray Grinnell. He taught me calculus for business management 1 and 2 at the University of Toronto, Scarborough campus.
Gotta rep that alumni status.
I even got the pin today, which Ray noticed. So we had Ray on the podcast. We talked to him about many different things, how he came about with his passion of mathematics and how he became a professor.
Yeah, and we talked about the juxtaposition of arts and the STEM majors, which was, I think, one of my favorite parts of the conversation was how the arts, which I'm heavily influenced by and heavily involved in, is quite similar to the STEM majors, to the mathematics, to the physics of the world. We talked about work ethic. We talked about growing up in Canada. We talked about similar experiences, yet very different point of view. We talked about USA versus Canada as well, the living experiences there. It was overall a very insightful conversation, genuinely entertaining guy, very, very, very funny and very thoughtful in his sentences.
Absolutely. We hope you guys enjoy the podcast.
Yeah, take your time with this one. This is a big one, but this is a very important one. If you're a student, take your time listening to this. If you're an educator yourself, I think everybody who listens to this will probably get something out of it. So sit back, relax, and have a good one. You can follow us, subscribe to us, and like all of our stuff on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever. Reach out to us if you have any suggestions, if you guys want to talk about anything specific. Please, please, please do not forget to check out our Patreon. That's the best way to support us. Sign up. We're going to start posting stuff there very soon. Probably going to make a separate video about it as well. That's enough housekeeping. The podcast starts now. Enjoy.
Take care.
Nazar, do you have a favorite cricket player? It could be Brian Lara, doesn't it?
You've probably heard of Imran Khan.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, the ex-prime minister of Pakistan. I'm very fond of him, not just because of the cricketing legacy he left behind in Pakistan, but also just like the legacy he left behind, or I guess he's continuing to grow. Otherwise, philanthropically and like just trying to do something different. Because you see a lot of these sports people, like I would say Michael Jordan, right? He comes into basketball, he becomes the best in the game, and then he turns into a businessman, and then that's the next 30 years of his life.
Sure.
As opposed to what Imran Khan tried to do was, he did the 30 years of cricket, and then he was like, I want to try something else, and I want to try to change the world, change my country, whatever. And there's a whole debate if he succeeded or not. That's a whole different conversation. But the attempt, I have to give him props for that, because not a lot of people would even try to do that. And
Are the mic checks done?
yeah, we're all good. We're rolling.
We're rolling.
Haile Gebrselassie is an extraordinarily successful businessman. Have you ever heard of him?
No. First time.
So he would probably be my... I don't like to use the word idol. My highest, just him and somebody else. Haile Gebrselassie held the world record in the marathon. He had very humble beginnings. He's not Kenyan. He's Ethiopian, and lives in Addis Ababa. I think has 4 children, and one of his daughters goes to our school.
Right. You mentioned you taught her.
Yeah, this was very cool.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to meet?
Oh yeah, we
Right?
we crossed paths, and so we first got introduced online, and so I see her name Gebrselassie. So I'm thinking, wait a minute. Perhaps in Ethiopia this is Smith.
Yeah.
Perhaps in Pakistan this is Said. Who knows? Maybe it's Johnson in America. I don't know how common that is. But in my mind, this could only mean one thing. So we were communicating by email about this and that, and I said to her, one of my great sporting heroes, distance running heroes, and just all around amazing human beings is Haile Gebrselassie. Emails back, that's my dad. So I had a Ray moment or two, and then later on, just before school ended, this was in about May, we happened to cross paths, and she presented me with a colorful book all about her father's running history, and he had signed it.
Wow.
Wow.
And well, you would know what that like because that was like because you had barbecue with Brian Lahr and holding this book, and he even said professor.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. So I need to somehow reciprocate and cast my mind forward to perhaps the possibility when daughter graduates that perhaps he might come to Toronto, part of graduation. And yeah, I've been thinking that
So
might happen.
is it like a part of? Would it be unethical for you to be like, can I have a meeting with your dad? Would that be like crossing the line as a professor?
I don't know. Oh, as a professor?
Yeah, because you guys corresponded through like.
Yeah, it was do for course stuff. She had some
Yeah.
questions or some administrative thing, or she couldn't write a test
Oh, I see.
or a quiz or something, so we had to take care of
But if
compensation.
in that
business.
moment you were like, "Oh, I'm a big fan of your father's," that would have been like crossing a line. I'm assuming.
I don't know.
Okay. Moral gray area.
I he has no gray. I'm thinking the opposite could never happen. I could never have it the case that, for example, you cross paths with Paxton in the gym and you say,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of your father. That would never ever. That would,
Well, you
that
know,
would
it might happen
never.
after this podcast. You know,
Well, actually,
podcasts are notorious to making UofT professors famous. So
well, then we're done. Son. No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Cool.
Yeah, and the conversation was mostly administrative.
Right.
yeah,
And I asked her, like, how is school going, and will you be in Toronto? And it would be interesting for you to see, like, how we do it here.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to UTSC before? How are you managing with COVID? So I was so mindful of, who I was talking to and who else was in my mind. And I guess my professional discretion didn't really. I wanted to help her out with her administrative business and with mathematics.
Right.
But I wanted to.
I only asked because we had, or all around you, behind you, there's a signed John Mayer poster and everything. We're big John Mayer fans, and we had his brother Carl on the podcast, and it was a great podcast. Loved it. And then after the podcast, we had like 10 minutes to shoot the bird, and there was a moment where I was like, would it be unethical if I was like, can you get your brother on the podcast? And then so we had this conversation before we were shooting. I was like, if there comes a moment, do I go for it or do I like preserve the sanctity of the podcast that we just did? And a moment arose. I didn't take the chance, but looking back now, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't. I'm like, because there was a moment that we had between Carl and us that was preserved, and it was pure, and it was just a lovely conversation that we had. And I feel like I would have tainted that moment if I were to
I see.
go above and beyond.
And if you do cross that line, you can't go back.
you can't
Yeah.
go back.
No
So-
amount of apologizing or,
Yep.
Good
But-
call.
But the friendship that we created, like I got married a couple of weeks ago, and I wrote a newsletter about. So I wanted to ask people, like people who were married for a long time, what their advice was. And I reached out to Carl. I was like, "You've been married for a decade. Do you have anything to say?" And he shot me like a couple of paragraphs, and I was like, "No, I think I prefer that over what might have gone
Yeah.
if that
Sure.
other path that I took had gone wrong."
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's
We also didn't want to make Carl feel like we used him to get to his brother.
Yeah.
But it was more like, having a connection with him, a relationship with him.
Yeah.
I'm sheepishly going to say it took me a moment to think John Mayer.
Gravity.
I enjoy music a lot,
Yeah.
but not that type.
Right.
Okay. What's your genre of choice?
A metal.
Metal. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know only a couple of metal songs. I try to get into it, but I guess it's too loud.
You can turn it down. You can't turn it down, and that's
Yeah.
part of it. It's
Yeah.
What do I like about metal? It's real, and the people who play it are real. Meaning, I believe they are authentic. I believe they say what they mean and mean what they say. It has wide appeal. It talks about real life stuff, struggle, adversity, feeling horrible, feeling great, trying to be authentic to yourself. And I like all that. I like what it stands for. I have it in my head when I'm doing sports. You must have seen it.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to push some iron.
Yeah.
Congratulations on being married. See, it's just measurable still in hours. Like this is a couple of weeks ago, 500 hours. Or
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can measure it in hours for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great. I feel like
yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
Yes, it's great. I mean, the whole ceremony was fun. We got it done in the US. And we took a break from the podcast because of that, obviously.
Whereabouts? Where'd you go?
In Houston.
Oh my.
It was very hot.
Yeah.
Quite
humid.
Yeah.
on a
quite
cool
humid.
day like today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually came back from Houston. You were like more grateful for Toronto summers.
Yes.
I mean, I know that the winters can get a bit harsh, but I think
I'll
the
take it.
summers make you forget how harsh the winters are. And yeah, just grateful to be here. Yeah.
We're from Karachi, right? So Karachi has very humid and hot temperatures as well. And like we were just talking about when our family was about to move and we were deciding where should we go, where should we start a new life, USA kept coming into the equation. And I'm so glad we didn't go there just recently because of what's happening in the news. And temperature-wise, we were also thinking about the southern part of the U.S. And I was like, why would we move from Karachi to only go to Houston where it's the exact same thing?
Yeah. Same
And
climate.
So I don't know. It all worked out. I love Toronto.
How long have you been here?
10 years.
Yeah. It's been a
been a
decade.
decade.
Yeah.
And
And we
how
love
is it?
It's great. Yeah.
So we've moved around a lot. We were born in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and then we moved to the States for a few years, and then we moved back to Karachi for like 7 years, and then we moved here, and we've been here for the past 10. And I think this is like for the first time ever. I'm only 25, but I don't know if I don't want to speak for you as well, but this is like the first time that I felt like, okay, this is home. We've gone to like London. He's been to Trinidad. We've explored the world. But every time we like pull into Pearson and you see like the CN Tower in the back, it's like, yeah,
Now we're home.
we're home.
Like, I mean, life passes by pretty fast. And looking back, I think we've spent a big chunk of our lives here in Toronto now. And yeah, it's where we call home away from home. And yeah, it's just lovely to be here.
Why? What is it about here? I believe lots of others who have been, for whom their back home isn't Toronto.
Yeah.
Or the surrounding area. I mean, I have a back home. People are sometimes surprised to hear me use that terminology. Their back home is somewhere, exotic. Karachi, Colombo, London, England, wherever. My back home is, I told you, I think.
You told me, yeah.
Markham, Ontario, yeah. And I lived outside of this area, all over the place too, in North America. But coming from you both, so why here? That can't be the donuts. It can't be.
It's not. It's
Or-
definitely
or,
Iced coffee
uh,
from
silly sense of humor, or
I don't know. I feel like because we've lived in Toronto, right, the Greater Toronto area. I feel like the people here are super accepting
They're very nice.
of just culture and respectful of everything. Like I've never had a moment of like doubt or a moment of hesitation to practice my religion, practice my culture, truly be who I am, ever. And that might be differing to a lot of other people's experiences, but our experience, or at least my experience, is that if I want to go play cricket, I can join a cricket league and it's good to go, right? If I wanna listen to like one of the biggest Pakistani artists sold out Scotiabank Arena, like that's huge, and like I can go and like, experience that music and experience that culture without any fear of anything, and I don't want to like shit on the US a lot, but literally as you cross the Windsor border and you step into Detroit, there's a change. And I feel it like
There's
in
tension.
in the bits of my soul. I'm like, this is different. And whenever we drive back and we're crossing the border and we're in Windsor, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, as long as you meet the border people and they're so kind to you and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, that's good to be back.
Yeah. I haven't really felt that anywhere else, if I'm being honest.
when you come back to Canada, you almost think they're going to say, you're finally back.
Yeah.
We've been expecting you.
Well, they do say that. Well, when they check your passport and all that as you're driving back, they give it back to you and say, "Welcome home."
Right on.
I'm like, "Yep." And then you drive past the immigration officers. You see a Tim Hortons in the corner, and you pull up, and you're like, "All right."
Ask her what she'd like. What do you have in your coffee? I'll be right back. Yes, I understand what you're saying. I had similar experiences living in America too.
Yeah. And it's so weird because, I mean, the cultures are same and then extremely different at the same time, Canadian and American cultures. And I mean, I felt the same thing when we were traveling the UK. Like when you're in England, you're in England. But as soon as you cross that border and you're in like Glasgow or Edinburgh, it's completely different. The vibe is different. The feeling is different, even though it's the same strip of land. That's so weird how that works, eh?
Similar here.
Yeah.
It's a great big chunk of land.
Yeah.
I too, that feeling is palpable. My wife and I lived in a very liberal part of the United States. It's Long Island, New York, South Shore of Long Island. And I summarize it this way, is that I thought 90% of just about everything was essentially the same. Similar cars, similar shopping, similar work, university, whereas that was similar. We did our sports. My wife and I are athletes, similar, etc. Then there was about 6%, which was different but okay.
Yeah.
For example, my wife found it weird. What are these things called miles?
Yeah.
So she grew up in a different country, and when I was a child here, I'm fluent in miles or kilometers, pounds, kilos, and whatnot, but she wasn't. So, there a day like today would be 87 degrees. I said, "Yeah, hon, that's warm. That's hot." And she wants to say 31.
Yeah.
I said, "No, well, don't worry about converting. Just go with nature." So there was this 6%, which was different, but it was all cool. And then there's this 4%, which was different and was not so cool. And I just, sometimes I'm shaking my head, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes that 4% was just, causing us over time to summarize by saying, only in America.
Yeah. That's true.
And on no uncertain terms are, us with our closest neighbor similar in those regards.
Yeah.
They're just totally different. And we didn't, at least I wasn't aware, we didn't have any sort of race stuff. My wife's black.
Yeah.
And if she did, I never knew about it. We generally had an excellent time.
Yeah. How long were you there, if you don't mind?
2 years.
2 years.
With the exception of 9/11.
Okay. Oh.
We moved there 6 weeks before that.
Oh,
Wow.
And we were there throughout the whole time. And where we lived, the distance from there to the trade centers would be about the distance from here to, I don't know, Hamilton, Milton,
Yeah.
Burlington, something like that. And it certainly changed America.
For
It changed North America, arguably changed the world. And things were really not the same afterwards. And
For sure.
we just decided after 2 years, let's go back to my home. That was not her home, but we had immigration, so on and so forth. And it was never really looked back.
We were in the States as well during 9/11, but the other side, we're in California. And I remember when that happened, we were asleep because it's 3 hours behind, right?
Right.
And it was like 6:30 in the morning, and my uncle is like banging the door. He's like, "You got to check the news." And we were all sleeping, and we had just arrived to the States too. It was just like a couple of weeks, and we were all like, I remember everyone huddled on the TV, and the first tower had fallen, and then we saw the second one.
But you guys would have been.
I
very
was
small,
5. He was 3.
I don't really remember.
I remember it like daylight. Like I remember it clearly
It's
because it was
interesting.
such a weird thing to see on TV.
Yeah, repeatedly.
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
On every television station. It's interesting you just mentioning that. I've had all kinds of conversations with students and that. About where they've moved from. I mean, all kinds of students come to our school from all over the place. And I'm often having time, and if they want to sort of talk about how they ended up coming, like why our school, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes the conversation will reflect, and I'll talk about living in different places. And some students never heard of it, or they heard of it, they've seen pictures of it. And I'm thinking, like I was like almost 40 at the time. I had lived all kinds of, tack on another 15 years, fellas.
You just dated yourself. I was just going to say.
I was doing the math in my head. Like,
I know you were, and I'm happy to say you were doing it correctly.
Thank you.
I'd like to meet your teacher. Yeah. I have my thoughts why the world does want to come here.
Yeah.
But I also understand too, the draw of America. Everything is bigger.
Yeah.
And
Truly.
there much more extremes. There's opportunities that we don't have here. Desirable and undesirable.
Yes.
I've often thought that Canada is just in some sense a toned down
Yes.
version.
I've felt that as well.
So are you happy with the move that you made 20 years ago? Like, are you happy with how
To America? Or?
to Canada?
Oh,
moving
to back
Canada?
home.
Yeah.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Jackie and I have mused if we had stayed in America. But that conversation, it probably lasts a good 30 seconds. And then that's it. No, we're very happy to come back here.
We wanted to get into some of your origin stories, like how you got into teaching and your studies and all that. And
Life growing up in Markham.
yeah. If you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm not originally from Markham. My very formative years were at Markham Road in Ellesmere, not far from school.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Elementary school was down there, and I even vaguely had some knowledge of UofT was sort of over there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So this was in the late 60s, very early 70s. So UTSC existed. I was just a little Ray. And we moved to Burlington for about 7 months, and then up to a farm at the corner of Major Mackenzie and the 9th line, northeast of Markham. My mom, my dad, my sister and I, we moved to this 10-acre farm, and my dad got this idea that he wanted to go into the greenhouse business. My parents grew up in Toronto. And I look back, my dad, most interestingly and heartfully, I see similarities in my disposition in my dad's. My dad was always reaching higher. He was never content with the thought that he could be doing better, and he always sort of moved, sort of cavalier. Risk taking is a bit strong. So he thought he wanted to try this greenhouse stuff, and that was weird, but it was kind of interesting. Good and bad living on this farm. You can actually go out and see if the Markham area. 9th line runs north and south. Major Mackenzie, and that house now is demolished. And all of that area is still supposedly going to be where the Pickering Airport is. So,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, I'm hoping I'll be looking down, not up, but I'll be looking down in 50 years when this airport is actually built. So let me know how it is. You can text me when this airport finally, and every now and then the conversation about that bubbles up. So we got expropriated and we moved into the town of Markham, where I went to high school. And I did not have good teenage years. I was not a good teenager.
You were not a good teenager? What does that mean?
I didn't do bad stuff, but I was quite sensitive. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't socialize well.
Okay.
Not surprisingly, I'm nothing like I am now.
Okay.
and this is one of the things that you will find as you increase in life, if you don't already have it, is we have this old Canadian saying, it's an international saying, more comfort in your own skin. More comfort in your own skin. And I found, I had one very close friend, and he was a big, rough kind of biker guy. And I was this kind of skinny guy, and there would be every possible reason why we shouldn't have been pals.
Yeah.
But we were. We actually did stuff that we shouldn't have done, for which I'm delighted to share with my son, but not you guys. Some stuff we did. But moving towards sort of work stuff, and my other passion in my life, it's not lifting, it's running. This is where I got started in that. But along the work part, the university work and that, I attribute having good fortune really to two groups of people, neither of which include me. My parents and about 3 or 4 teachers that I had in high school. I went to Markham District High School, the old one.
Okay.
There's now a new one,
Okay.
which is a couple of 100 meters east of where the old MDHS was. And at times I've thought these high school teachers probably had no idea, casting to the future, the influence they would have on me. And then I thought, no, Ray, they had every idea. And this is why they do what they do, because they know that.
Mm-hmm.
They know deeply the opportunity that they might have to positively influence this kind of skinny. I wasn't lonely, but I was kind of alone.
That's a very distinct. That's a very important distinction, to be not lonely but alone.
Yes, not lonely, but I was alone a lot. And my sister's 2 years younger, but we kind of had real different groups of friends. And my parents, a very nice home life. I was very, very, very close to my parents. And I was all of my life. My dad's been dead actually 10 years this year, but I was very close to my dad. Very, very close. And I still am to my mom. I was on the phone with my mom yesterday.
Did you tell her you were going to be here?
I think I did. Yeah. So if my mom knew what a link was, I would let her have it.
Yeah.
My mom's 86, and she's getting the hang of things. So I had these. So I'm going to count. So I had this very influential sort of physics teacher who actually helped me a lot with calculus. And 2 very, very good math teachers, Linda Butler and Allison Worrell. And the physics teacher was Jim Bacon, Dr. Jim Bacon. He had a Ph.D. And a very influential phys ed teacher. His name was Ed Winnicott. And it's very interesting when I kind of look back, because I graduated from high school and it's 41 years ago, 1981.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So there I go, dating myself again. And when I kind of think about how some aspects of my life have gone, I do attribute to these particular teachers, and particularly to my parents too. My parents were, they knew that I was bright, but they knew you cannot advance yourself just by being bright.
True.
You have to work very hard, and you have to try to really enjoy what you're doing, which didn't always mean like.
Yeah.
And they're very, very smart. Neither of my parents went to university. I was the first. My mom went to about grade 10. My dad finished grade 13, both in Toronto. But they kind of instilled this sense that it is not always supposed to be fun. It's not always supposed to be easy. But if it fulfills you, the challenge is trying to figure things out yourself. And they underlined a lot yourself. Sometimes I think they were very reluctant to encourage me to get extra help, which is something we say all the time to our students, get extra help, get extra help. And quite lately, I've kind of revisited this. I'm not always so sure that this is the best thing to say. But these 4 teachers, 2 in math, 1 in physics, and 1 in phys ed, I've reflected over some decades as to just how influential they were. They were all very patient, and they were superb teachers. They knew what they were doing. That is clear to me now as being an educator. And they were well educated. They were encouraging. They were patient. They were firm. And at the end of high school, in the yearbook thing, you used to have an opportunity to put a couple of sentences down. And I remember mine was something like, in 10 years, I'll be asking my grade 13 students what they will be doing in 10 years.
Yeah.
They were very special people. They're not the only teachers that I had which were influential. But I didn't go on in classics. I didn't go on in geography. And I've often thought it's interesting. I've made my career in mathematics, in particular mathematics teaching, and in running. I mean, I've spent my whole life. I ran today, and I will tomorrow.
I want to talk about that.
I wanted to actually ask you.
Trying to keep up to you guys.
No,
I'm sure you can still run
I'm not so
longer or faster than us.
my stamina is like worse. My stamina is probably what yours should be at your age. But
Slap him, please. Real nice.
because I'm already dreading. We have a cricket match tomorrow morning, and it's like my first game for the league. And I'm like, the one thing you told me, nothing about like, oh, like watch the ball or like, ease into your shots. He was like, please field and run properly when you're on the pitch. Yeah. So that's my thing.
But we've talked about fitness. In the
We
gym.
have, yeah.
How's it going? I mean, I haven't seen you. This sounds like school. I haven't seen you lately.
I've been focusing a lot more on like aquatics. So I've been going a lot more swimming and just easing my body up through that. You're right. I have been lacking in terms of
Called
lifting.
out on the pod.
I'm being called out in terms of lifting and doing more weights. But I feel like with the summer and the season of cricket, it really helps my body to swim and be more relaxed through swimming, the hot tub, the sauna. I really use those things. Yeah.
What are some of the physical challenges of cricket?
Well, it really depends on your role, because some people are batters, some people are bowlers. They're two very distinct skills that people have. I myself consider myself to be a bowler, so it's sort of like pitching in baseball, except that you can't bend your arm. Right. So you run in from a distance if you're a fast bowler.
Right.
And then you have a quick stop, and then you try to bowl as fast or pitch as fast as you can. So it takes a lot of toll on your body. There's a research that happened at one of the universities, and they compared fast bowling to getting into a mini car accident every single time you bowl because of the toll that you put on your body. So yeah,
You had a question where you stopped.
I was gonna ask. So you mentioned a lot where you were a bright kid. What was that reflective of how you conversed, or was that your grades that were reflecting of how bright you were?
I had good grades. I wasn't the top student, but I had good grades. In elementary school, I had an opportunity to skip a grade a million years ago, but my parents said no. My birthday's at the end of the year, which would have even put me younger. Which, at my time of life, to be younger is an interesting thought. But at that time, this was grade 3. I was like 8. And my parents felt that, sociologically, developmentally, no. So that was fine.
Did you also do grade 13 here? Was it grade 13 a thing?
I did. Grade 13 was still around. So I finished high school in 1981. And, grade 13 was around for, I think, another 10, 12 years maybe.
Right.
And then it was replaced by this OAC business. But later on, after 1991, I sort of left Ontario, and after a while left Canada too. My psyche was not really an education in Ontario or that.
So did you always have that passion for mathematics and being good at it while you were in high school, or was that something that you?
Yes.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it when I couldn't get it.
Really? Because that was the worst part.
That's
of
the frustrating
mathematics
part for most students.
Indeed. Indeed it is. It's the emotional part.
Mm-hmm.
It's not being able to withstand that frustration. And you can tell how my speech has stopped, that I've thought about this on at least a day.
Yeah.
And this is even getting more challenging because of the necessity that students have everything now.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing, I think, in the minds of my students that doesn't happen sort of now. I mean, I have a 15-year-old, and everything is sort of like now.
Yeah.
And to not get that now, when one is so accustomed to, is an opportunity for frustration. But I don't think that way. My understanding is that in the mathematical community, which, I occupy, if you were to take a very small dot, I occupy that small dot in the big mathematical community, is that this is a fairly common trait amongst mathematicians and academics in general, is feeling challenged, inspired, fueled by things that are intellectually difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm such a person. And my mathematical colleagues and other academics, I believe this is the case for them too. And the same with the sport that I've spent my life doing, is running. This is extremely cerebral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy sport. Everybody
sure.
does a bit. It's like math. Everybody does some, but few do it for the pursuit of that sport itself. Or few do mathematics. Like when you and I were doing business together, you may not have even known anybody who was specializing in math. There are
Right.
such people.
It's a very interesting point that you raised, because I've done a lot of university, but I only have one degree to show for it. So I was in, this guy laughs because he knows I was in engineering for a couple of years. I was in electrical engineering because, again, when you're an immigrant eldest son, you have a whole load of responsibilities. And I wanted to pursue writing, and that was just not flying in my house. So my dad was like, no, you're going to do engineering. And then whatever you want to do after is your choice, but I need that undergrad degree. So I was like, fine. I went to UOIT, not UofT, and we'll talk about that as well, because I'm really interested in the whole undergrad process, if it matters if you go to school, where you go to school. But anyways, I digress. So I went to UOIT for a couple of years. I did electrical engineering, and I just could not get over that hump that you're talking about, of it being difficult and my brain just being like, this is not happening. And it got extreme. I got through first year with a hope and a prayer. And then as soon as I got into second year and started doing coding, I was like, I'm out. I can't do it. And then I had to get out, and I finished my degree in marketing. But the thing that you're talking about, the pursuit of difficulty and the frustration, I accept that when I'm writing. I'm also a writer. So I have a couple of poetry collections out. And when I'm trying to finish a thought and it's not rhyming, now that's the frustration that I thrive in. And I love it when I'm like, okay, so this is the idea that I'm chasing, right? This is the picture that I'm painting. It's not finishing, and it's not rhyming in the way that I want it to. So now I'm trying to fix it, trying to look back, as you would in a math equation, to see if you made any mistakes in the back. Maybe you can change something, apply a different formula up before. And then when I do that, and when I finish that stanza or finish that couplet, I feel so good.
Why is that?
I have never understood that. And I tried to apply that same logic to engineering and mathematics, because I do think that even the arts and the STEMs, even though they're far apart, polar opposites, but they're not really. There is a Venn diagram where they meet, and it is that frustration, that writer's block, that I've hit a wall. I need to move forward. I don't know how, so I'm gonna find a way out.
I think, indeed, I think there's commonalities in mathematics, English, creative writing, music, probably in all kinds of other academic pursuits, academic subjects.
Mm-hmm.
So in the way of academia, we abstract that and we kind of look at it. And what I understand about that is one of the most satisfying episodes in people's lives is when they set forth a difficult challenge, maybe even one that is greater than they think they can meet. And they prove to themselves that they can meet it, particularly under their own power.
Mm-hmm.
We all get support. You guys have made this opportunity due to the support of each other, your parents. I was at convocation, and I finished my little role there, and I was just looking around, taking it all in, of all of the support that students have from their parents, brothers and sisters. But afterwards, in talking with some students, I kind of reminded them, don't forget, you did all the work. I mean, you're the man who put in the time and showed yourself you could do that
Mm-hmm.
when you had to find those connecting ideas. And I'm very quick to sort of remind our students, I think this is one of the most satisfying episodes to be sought for repetition in people's lives, is to set forth goals and try to execute them and complete them well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then do the next one, and then do the next one.
Yeah,
And I think this is very powerful stuff. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
Because I feel like the brain, like at least my brain, was wired to deal with that frustration, but I guess not in that outlet. And then as soon as I applied it to things that I was like passionate or genuinely curious about, it just flourished.
This is key, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Is trying to identify those things of passion.
Yeah.
Of passion. So in high school, I was a good student.
Yeah.
It's interesting when I talk about grades.
Yeah.
So I think in grade 13, I was like fourth from the top in my class.
Great.
And I had 76 in calculus.
Wow.
76 was fourth from the top. And just so you know, there weren't just 5 students in the class.
I was going to ask you how many students.
Of course you were.
That's a dad joke right there.
There you go. We didn't just meet, I don't know. In grade 13 calculus, there might have been 2, of course. So there could have been about 55 students or so.
Yeah.
But the point I often underline for students is that 76 got you fourth from the top.
Mm-hmm.
And now, 76 gets you fourth from the bottom.
Truly.
type thing. So I actually went to university wanting to study physics. And I've been asked if I didn't study mathematics and I didn't do physics, what I might else have done with my life. But I'll let you ask that at a different time, because I have thought of what else I might have done.
How did you find the experience of university going from grade 13 to university, right? Because there's no more grade 13 anymore. And I feel like a lot of students who go from high school here to university, they feel like it's a big leap for them. They feel like the transition from high school to university is very steep. So was that the same in your experience as well?
No, it wasn't as steep. Grade 13 was not just an extension 1 year beyond grade 12. I took 7 subjects in grade 13: English, biology, chemistry, physics, and 3 math courses. And so I had math like 14 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
tons of math, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But also that just extra year of maturing. So it wasn't just, intellectual preparation. I was 1 year older going to university. And I also think the sort of just preparation from high school, that's a long time ago. We didn't have things that did the work for us.
Yeah.
In particular, there was no internet.
Mm-hmm.
There were essentially no computers. There were computers, but they were pretty big. A few people had calculators, no laptop. So you did it yourself.
All of it.
Are you trying to say that degree at that time it took more
harder.
out of you? It was harder. Okay, there we go.
It was harder. Yeah. Some students have even said, like, how did you do that? And I actually have textbooks that I used in my first year. And the first thing students say when they look at them is that, this looks real old. I say, well, yeah, 4-0. Because there's no, there was no holding back. The mathematics was just there. There was no endeavor to sort of make it easier or more understandable. It was, to quote a saying that people use all the time, it was what it was,
Yeah.
period. There was not a quest to sort of make it easier or make it anything different than it was. And a lot of the books that I use sort of came out of a mathematical tradition from the 50s and 60s, which in North America was very important. I certainly was challenged, and I was at UofT at Scarborough. But I don't think it was the same sort of just thrown into the deep end that I feel our students are now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, too, that is different, I did not go to university with a sense of fear. And so many of our students are deeply afraid.
Oh, yeah.
What are they afraid of?
That's not clear. They're afraid. They're afraid of people like me. They are afraid to. They're afraid. They're afraid to look who they are.
Mm.
They're afraid to reveal that they are students who've just finished high school. They are, I believe, afraid to let people down. And this was not a part at all, and I attribute this again to my parents. I could not fail them. My parents had two points of advice for me going to university. And I've told many people about this, and I don't know how they did this because they had no university experience. And their words of advice were actually remarkably simple, and this is perhaps why they're so powerful. They said, number one, whatever you choose to study, Ray, whatever you choose to study, do the kind of job that's going to satisfy you. Notice they're out of the equation altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, try and study some things that you think you'll really enjoy, will really fill you up. That was it. They said, we'll let you stay at home, rent-free. They helped me, I think, buy my first car. I worked during the summer to pay for school.
Mm-hmm.
And very often I've reflected on how powerful their simple advice was.
Yeah.
They didn't say study this or study that, or we want our son or daughter to do this or that. They were remarkable in that
Truly.
sense.
That's huge.
Is that something that you try to pass on to your kids now? Now that you're a father?
Huh. What do I try to pass on to my son? He's just incredible.
For sure.
Right. Yeah, and even speaking to him, I feel like you guys have a very close bond and a relationship.
I say to him sometimes, you can't know what it's like to know you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a privilege you have.
Yep.
Truly.
Me and my wife.
Yeah.
I said, you have the whole world ahead of you. Take your time. Don't do stupid things.
Yeah.
You're a smart kid. You get all your smarts from your mom. You get all your good looks from your mom. I think I helped you lift the barbell.
Right.
And tried to introduce you to some good people.
Right.
So you did a lot of schooling after high school. You went to undergrad.
10 years.
10 years, right? You went to undergrad and then you went to grad school and then you went to postgrad school as well?
No.
Or?
I went to UofT, then York, and then Queens.
So first question, why? And second question, after you did your grad school, did you ever work at like a corporate facility or did you go in straight into education?
Yeah. University's been my whole life.
How's that? Why? Let's go with that. Because that's a very
Like you
distinct
pursued
path.
your bachelor's and your master's and your
Yeah.
PhD.
No, my path is not especially unique.
Okay.
It's not maybe not quite as traditional as some of my colleagues, but not that different. I always say to my students and my son, like, on no uncertain terms, the big world outside of university is indeed a big world. I mean, university world, it's not very big in the big scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't diminish its importance. In fact, I sometimes think, university life, it is maybe more important than our society gives it credit for. But of course, it would be easy for me to be biased about that. This is my line of work and so on. Why? I love my subject. I still love mathematics.
When did you find that out? At what age?
I was sort of in the beginning of my second year. My first year, I did 5 maths in my first year. I did a philosophy of course. I did this silly physics course, a computer science course. And then my first summer, I worked in heavy construction in Richmond Hill. And so I signed up for the math specialist program. And UTSC was much smaller. There was like 4,000 students at the time.
Wow.
And the department had like 7 profs. So
Wow.
it was pretty tiny. And I had good grades. But I started thinking, like, there's worlds of my subject out there, and I didn't want to miss it. So I signed up for a specialist program, and I took 5 maths in my fall of my second year, and then 5 in the winter. And I just fell headlong into that subject. Of course, this almost certainly would not have happened had it not been for my profs and some of my friends. I didn't have too many friends. I often say to students, talk, what I would say? I'd say, talk about your friends. You have friends. I have friends too. I have friends. But my profs, UTSC, I love the feeling of their intellectual strength. These people were so smart. And I wanted to be like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to have deep knowledge of something. And I thought, actually, I think my emotion was just so in with this subject. And I started to study it more, and through that, started to get fairly good at it. And through my second year, I started thinking, period. I started thinking.
There we go.
I started thinking, so at the end of my second year, I was 20, the
Yeah.
end of my second year. And they started, and on occasion, somebody would talk about graduate school, and I noticed all my profs, Ph.D. and so forth. And I started to really investigate what this whole world was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some very dear colleagues, and I had three colleagues. And one of these colleagues is actually my very close friend who lives in Ajax. We've been pals for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we still very good pals, and we always trying to get each other to get out for pizza. I remember, I'll tell you a little story that's funny. I remember when he first introduced me to now his wife. And that happened. It was way down in the H-wing, BV.
Right.
Was down there. And so now whenever I'm talking about my friend, I said, I've known him longer than he's known her. And they have grown children and so on and so forth. But I had these two colleagues, in particular in mathematics. And between the three of us, we had these two very essential properties. And that is, we were on the same serious kind of wavelength. We loved mathematics. And we loved learning it. We loved being confused. We loved helping each other. But we also were sort of intellectually in a similar place. And I often say this to students now who are looking for other people to work with. Try to find people who have your same sense of wavelength, same page, as it were, and are fairly intellectually compatible. You don't want to work with somebody for whom they're always going to be just helping you and you may be not reciprocating. So I had these two very close pals. And my profs at the time, of course, they knew what they were doing, but they taught very well. They were very careful. And I think they realized that I had some talent with a small t,
Mm-hmm.
and they encouraged me to work harder. They encouraged me to work very hard, joyfully hard. And that's kind of how things kind of went. I worked with these two guys, and my profs, and it was very cool when I came back in 2003 that some of my colleagues were some of my profs when I was a student. In fact, there's a couple of them.
Full circle.
And there's a couple of my colleagues that I've known for like 40 some odd years.
Yeah.
And
So why did you go into grad school right after undergrad?
more
Why didn't you-
math.
Was that a means of you becoming a prof? Like was the master's and the PhD?
Yeah, towards the middle to the end of my undergraduate degree, I thought, I think this is what I want to do. I didn't know that I could do it, but that was secondary to having the desire. This is what I think I want to do. I just love that subject so much. I couldn't imagine myself abandoning it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about other things in your life that you have such a deep passion for, hold in your head at the same time the thought of abandoning it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. And I actually had some times in my life where I thought I couldn't find employment.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, there was a couple of times when I couldn't find employment. And I came very close to abandoning mathematics. And it just didn't work out that way. And I was able to keep on in somewhat of a non-traditional position. Like my position at UTSC is not an academically typical position. It's very teaching, very, very teaching big. And I actually take on more teaching.
Do you ever think what path you would have taken if you might have abandoned mathematics? Like, would you have been
I
working-
thought of making money. As I often say, for example, like I get faculty at UofT we have some very, very nice benefits to service our work. I mean, we can get textbooks. We have grant money that pays for textbooks and so on. Dental is great. Medical is great. You get sabbaticals. And I often say this is the compensation for the lack of compensation. But the compensation is fine. I mean, I live in Ajax and we have a very nice quality of life. And I would say for our podcast record, you can't find a better employer than U of T. I mean, I've worked at 5 other universities in my life. And our employer, the community, the financial part, the benefit part, the holistic part, it is remarkable, actually.
How long have you been teaching?
31 years.
Is there a student that stands out? One student?
Not one.
Not one?
A handful, maybe.
None stand.
None stand.
What do you mean? None.
They
Not
should-
even one.
Watch your quantifiers. You're talking to a math person.
Like, or maybe have you taught anyone like a celebrity per se that went through?
Yes. I think I taught Elon Musk.
No, you did not.
I think so. Paxton, my son Paxton, is a smart kid. So he was, Elon Musk did his undergraduate degree at Queen's
Yes.
sometime in the late 80s and studied economics, would have had to take an economics math course, and I was teaching such a thing.
Okay.
That is insane.
But
So-
you personally have no recollection.
No.
So it's a possibility that you did.
Okay.
And the following is also impossible. Elon is having a conversation with his pals, sharing a root beer, and said, you know where this is. Do you remember Ray Grinnell? In my dreams. Oh, well, Haile Gebrselassie daughter. That
For
was
sure.
very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Some years ago, there was a situation where the UTSC registrar got in touch with me, whom I knew at the time. And we had this very nice rapport, and he kind of explained a situation regarding a student in a course of mine. It was a bit irregular. And I thought, okay, yeah, et cetera, so on, yeah. And then in the conversation, he said, by the way, this is the son of the Bank of China. I thought, of course it is. Right on. So that introduced a little bit of a deviation in the conversation. I don't know. But my suspicion is that there's been all kinds of students who are sons and daughters of people of real importance.
Yeah.
But standout, certainly some students that I've taught, like intellectually, mathematically, stand out in my mind. And I mean, I've even said to them, I was nowhere as good as you.
Has anyone ever gotten a perfect score in one of your courses?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. How did that feel?
Yeah. How did that feel?
I'm asking you.
I can't relate.
You don't remember that 100? Oh.
How does it like? Okay, so for me, it's really interesting to hear your life story, just because you mentioned that you were a very sensitive kid. I'm assuming, were you a shy kid as well when you were a teenager?
Not especially.
So was it easy for you to come on a platform and start teaching? Because
Oh, yes.
that's like what, 200 students looking at you
At least.
per night,
Yeah.
and then you have like 4 courses. Let's say you're teaching, you got thousands of eyes on you. That's completely chill. You're not even a little bit hesitant.
You saw me.
There's 2 things that you were very famous or well known for. Number
Or
one,
infamous. Go on, my friend. Go on.
number one was for you. You were a great lecturer. As someone who's not a morning person, personally, I would wake up at 6:30 in the morning, take the bus to UTSC, and attend your 8 a.m. Monday morning lectures. In IC 130 with about 300 people. So that was the first thing that you were very well known for. The second thing was for how challenging your exams were. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't have told before that you used to be if you were shy or if you had problems speaking in front of large groups of people just because of how comfortable you seemed in your lectures.
Yeah, no, there's no, I mean, that comes with practice. I mean, I think I've lectured more than 2,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
So that particular space is becoming familiar. And understand why students are there, maybe more than they do.
Yeah.
Understand why they're there and how they are there. And I may be getting some ideas as to how to have an environment that may even enrich, maybe even inspire their time in that course. I don't think it is unusual for people who are, for lack of a better term, presenting in front of people to have perhaps personality that is not the same as people see in public like that.
Mm-hmm.
A great example of that, and tragic too, was Robin Williams.
Truly.
I mean, Robin Williams, of course, he's known for his genius comedy of all sorts. My understanding, though, of his life a little bit is that in his personal life, in that he was amicable, but on the quieter side.
Mm-hmm.
I think something sort of happens when I have that opportunity to be amongst all those students, and now as a parent to be amongst children of other parents. In fact, some parents are not even my age. I mean, a lot of students are 20, so their parents may be in their mid-40s or late 40s. And I take that as very sacred. Also, too, is sort of the sacredness that for almost all of our students, like you're a great example, Bashaar, is that our opportunity to interact up until this and up until meeting at the gym was singular to that. I only had that one chance.
Yeah.
To do something for you.
Yeah.
And all of your colleagues. And I guess through my history, my love of the subject and what education can do to people, the transformative things that happen through our students' 4 years at university. Like you're not the same guys than when you started university as to now. You're not the same guy now that you're a married guy.
Yeah. Well, it's coming in. It was a bit tight, so the ring isn't here, but
Yeah.
yes, for sure.
And I've seen this over the years. I'll work with students in their first year, and I'll have association with them and see them at graduation. And I know what's happened. They don't know what's happened, but I've seen, and they are completely different. To have an opportunity, repeatedly, an opportunity to maybe affect something good in people like that. This is all I need to know, is to have a very big presence in the lecture.
Is that the most rewarding part of your job for you?
It certainly is amongst them. And I anticipated you might ask that question. Are there any, because you asked about any students that stand out.
Yeah.
There's some students that stand out because of their their mathematical prowess. Like sometimes I've written letters of recommendations for students, and they'll have 12 courses they've got 100 in, and no course below 90.
Wow.
Thinking, yep, they got 100 in my courses.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, how did you get so smart? And and I have a chance, to write a letter for you. How would you say that? How good is that? Is that how you say it? How good is that?
Yeah.
I I can't believe it sometimes when I see, because I know some things about the content of these courses, and to get 100. But there's other students that I've known who either through management students, and they really have resonated with me, but not for their sort of mathematical activity. They've just hit a particular note in my personality, and I find the way that they've gone about doing things, or their personality, or sort of how they see things, or perhaps it's been that despite being so busy and being in a particularly hectic time of life, and their subject of interest is not mine, sometimes I just can't believe that they've found time to spend with me. They'll like this.
Yeah.
I just can't believe it at times. I just can't believe it.
For me, it's I can't believe that you're here and we're having this conversation. It's an honor for me.
I said to my colleagues, and they thought I was insane, and quite literally. I don't think a week goes by, I'll walk around, I'll be on campus, or I'll be in my office, I'll be doing something, or I'll be with my students, and I'm thinking, giving myself a shake. I'm a prof at UofT.
Yeah.
In the minds of all kinds of people, and for very good reasons, this is a top-notch school in our country. It's known worldwide. I have this subject that I love to do, and the people that I love to work with, and my office people, my department, they have no idea how incredible they are. And I kind of have to give my head a shake, like, how could this happen?
Yeah.
And I mentioned this to some of my colleagues, and they say, go back to your office. You've been doing too many derivatives. They think I'm insane. And they are very, very gracious, but I sometimes still, like I'm coming up 60, and I just can't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned that I run, and sometimes when I'm running, I just can't believe this. I started running a long time ago, and I can still go along okay. And it's like, I just can't believe this.
So when you mentioned that feeling of disbelief, do you ever battle imposter syndrome? Like, how did you get here?
No.
Because you have the degrees to prove it.
Yeah. If you need me to prove something, I can.
There we go. I had a bet with him. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's gonna slip one math joke in here. And
the shirt itself, right?
Oh yeah, just for you. Yeah, we were down. I got this at the equivalent of a dollar store down in southwestern Ontario. We were camping once, and we went and we poked in Goderich, Ontario. And I just had to.
It's genius.
It's
I
great.
love it.
Love it.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I've wore this to school.
What would you have? Because we're gonna wrap up in a bit. I just wanted to know what would you have your students, if they could learn one thing from your lectures. What would that be? What would the summary, the gist, the thesis of your entire, pursuit of being an educator be? That, if there was a student that went by your class, this is one thing I would want them to for sure take away.
Be curious.
Be curious. That's very
constantly try to seek understanding on your own terms. No question is a bad question. Keep wondering about things. Question things that you think are certain. Be curious. Be constantly wondering. Yeah.
Be curious.
That's often I've said about teaching mathematics and mathematics. It says, if there's anything in this world that is certain, it may well be that.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a nice quality of that subject. It brings some certainty into students' lives. There typically is one answer. The answer is X equals 5. Different ways to get it, and so forth. But there's other areas of academia, management studies and all kinds of other subjects for which there is not one answer. But it doesn't matter. I would request that people continue to be Really, really curious. Really question things. Question yourself. Question why you're doing what you're doing. Try to get some clarity. But you get that clarity only by questioning things.
There's a question that I used to ask myself when I was doing calculus, and a lot of my colleagues at the time did. When you talk about questioning, basically intentionalism, like why are you doing what you're doing? I would ask myself that question when I was doing calculus. I'm like, why am I studying calculus? I'm never going to use this in real life. I have a corporate job today, and I'd never find myself finding a derivative of this, or finding the marginal revenue, or doing annuities. So, what would you say to someone like that who's asking, like, why am I studying calculus? Like, what's the point of calculus if I'm not going to use it every day in my life?
Oh, sure, I'm brokenhearted. You don't use that stuff every day. Oh dear. So I get that question an awful lot. Where am I going to use this in my real life? And I understand what the student is saying, but the student isn't saying what they really mean. I often will say, well, look, while you're a student, there is no more life, and a life that is more real than the one you have right now. But of course, students have difficulty with the present. They're looking far ahead. And I say that attitude was a bit foreign to me as a student because I was firmly in the present. I didn't really look ahead. I was interested in what I was doing now. And I will say to you, how do you know when you are 18 or 20? How do you know what you're going to be using and not using 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Moreover, what's convincing you that of the deeper ideas, the deeper ways of thinking, the ways of thinking that mathematics forces you to engage in, how are you so sure that you will not be using these things?
Yes.
So I reach this from a place for which it will cause them to think, no, I may not be taking a derivative. I may not be doing an integral. I may not be solving a max-min problem. But I think in all kinds of employment in the big world, you are called upon to think in certain kinds of ways, a multitude of ways, logical, questioning, structured, analytical, abstracting, following instructions, following algorithms, questioning, things that have numerical overtones to it, things that have structure. This is the very substance of mathematics. And so the skills that you must bring to bear to do mathematics, while I haven't had experience in the real world, I've lived enough vicariously through your kind over many years that I am convinced that those skills are absolutely useful, but they're just not as obvious.
I agree.
Yeah,
That's very great that you mentioned that. Yeah.
I don't like this term, but the important soft skills. There's no doubt about that.
Why don't you like that term?
Because sometimes the word soft seems a bit deprecating.
I see. Okay.
As opposed to hard skills.
Yeah.
And I don't think the acquisition of those soft skills is easy for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Right.
So it isn't clear to me what is soft about them. But I know that's just kind of management speak.
Yeah. But I agree with your take is that the struggle, like we were just talking about,
The frustration,
right? It like me not being able to solve these coding problems. I take that same mindset and apply it to something else, which has nothing to do with mathematics per se, evidently, but in the broader scheme of things, it kind of does. Yeah. So it's useful.
So where did that mindset come from?
Exactly. It probably came from struggling to do calc in year one.
Struggling with calculus, it probably did not blunt that mindset.
Yes. It probably sharpened it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were speaking about this when I first crashed into you at the gym, that I think it's been 6 years since I've taken your course, but what I've learned, what I've taken from that is working hard for every single grade mark. collaborating with my peers, thinking outside of the box, questioning things, doing a deeper dive, and making myself understand so many things, and just developing that work ethic of working hard for your grade. That's what I take away from your course, and I think I keep that with me till this day.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, it's difficult when, for so many of our students, I'm convinced that their path to university has been anything but difficult. And on the other side of it, for many of our students, they've had extraordinary difficulties coming to university, navigating, and so on. One thing I believe about, university subjects is that difficulty, challenge, interest, curiosity, the substance of academia, it is not unique to any one subject. I've sometimes heard people say this. It doesn't so much matter what you study at university. I'm not quite sure I agree with that. But in associating with many students in a wide variety of disciplines and my colleagues in other disciplines, I, on no uncertain terms, recognize that every subject has its challenges, has its unknown elements to it, has aspects for which students have to develop certain types of thinking to do well, to satisfy themselves in that. Mathematics is just one particular flavor. I do think it's a bit of a special flavor in the sense that I don't know of a university that does not have mathematics. And I'm not too sure of other subjects that have a 2,000-year-old history. And moreover, I don't know of any nation, first world, developing, industrialized, whatever words, that does not have some kind of mathematical presence.
Oh, for sure.
I recognize a little bit the importance of all kinds of subjects and so, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think mathematics was particularly special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to end this episode.
I think that's pretty novel.
Send them off like that and make them think about that.
Work hard on your midterms, guys.
Ray, thank you so much for taking the time out.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Probably took a chunk out of your running time today, but
no, actually, I was on the road at 6 this morning.
wow.
So I,
How long did you run today?
77 minutes.
Do you have one of those sport watches that tracks it, or
No.
do you just go off the
No,
dome?
I just have a 15-year-old stopwatch. I'm real low in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I
I wanted to talk about the runner's high. We never got the opportunity.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that a little bit, do you have runner's high when you're running?
Yep.
That you're automatically like out of your body, you're in someplace else, and you're going
Pretty
for it
much.
now.
Does it
How do you-
matter where you're running from? I've never seen you run in the gym. Like I've never seen you on the treadmill.
Actually, funny you should mention that. So I had a fairly long period of time off of running from about last October. I had a real bad injury down in my Achilles, and I had to take a long period of time off. So I just worked very hard in the gym, and I was spinning at home. But I knew I would, and I had to eventually come back to that. So in around March, I got on the treadmill, and 10 minutes, the Achilles was okay. And then next week, I'd ramp it up to 15 minutes, a couple times a week. The Achilles was okay. And it slowly just got back. And I thought, Ray, just take your time. And I attribute getting back healthy to running with actually a lot of leg work.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen you work those calves.
Yeah, I worked my calves. And so in the gym, out of every 3 workouts, 2 is for my upper body and 1 is for my legs. And
Yeah.
I said this to Paxton. I said, I think I've been doing quite all right with running because of the leg work.
Yeah.
He said, yeah. And even other people that have said to in the gym, they said, yeah. I mean, people whose opinions, I trust, and they've been at this stuff for a long time. But yeah, running. So I started in 77, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had some times off, and about 5 years ago, this knee, I thought that was it. And I'd get acupuncture. My knee looked like Slipknot Pinhead and acupuncture stuff.
Yeah.
And it was all bandaged up, and I've had all kinds of injuries and so on.
Because of running?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I appreciate getting older, I summarize it this way, is when I'm running and I'm feeling really, really good, then this is the time to slow down.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, because at this time in my life, the distance between my body and my head is so vast.
Yeah.
Like my mind thinking is about your age.
Mm-hmm.
My mind thinking about running, I'm in my late 20s, in my early 30s, but my body's twice that.
Yeah.
And if I don't work to keep these things aligned, I'm just going to end up getting hurt.
Yeah.
I experienced that with my dad. My dad thinks he's a 20-year-old young person, like lifting things and, luggage or whatnot. And I'm like, Dad, you're not 20
You gotta
anymore.
chill. Yeah,
But it's hard to convince him otherwise.
Yeah.
Would you have any tips for us? Because I've been trying to pursue the running lifestyle, but I guess consistency obviously is the key.
Quite.
But I find myself not enjoying the process of running. I do 15 minutes and I'm like huffing and puffing and I'm like I'm about to throw up. And
Yeah.
then I do that for a week and then I'm done.
Yeah.
What would your advice be?
Most people that I've known who have tried it, and as they try to do too much too soon, too hard, too much too soon, too hard, and I think it takes a good while for your ligaments, your tendons, for your bones to withstand the impact. It takes more time for those to withstand the impact than I think than to develop your cardiovascular to be able to run. And I think that's what causes people to give it up. They do too much too soon, too hard too soon. They see other people who've maybe been running for a couple of years and they want to be like that.
Yeah.
And they just think, okay, I'll go out. And they end up getting hurt and then abandon it.
Yeah.
And that emotional thing takes over. They get hurt and they abandon. They don't want to go back to that pain.
Yeah.
As opposed to sort of going back and thinking, no, this wasn't the right way. So this isn't my advice. This is time-tested advice from people who've taught people to run. And that is, don't start by running at all.
Okay.
Take a period of time to walk a lot. I've actually done this when I've come back from injuries. So I'll start building up walking so I can comfortably walk for 90 minutes, 3, 4, 5 times a week.
Yeah.
No impact. This will slowly build up the kind of strength you need in tendons, bones, and ligaments. And then very, very gradually introduce a little bit of running. And I mean a little bit. Jogging for 30 seconds at a time and then taking a minute walk. And people will look at me and say, well, this will take forever. I says, no, it won't. I mean, before you know it, you can go out and jog for a minute.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you can jog for 2 or 3 minutes. And then you start to get ambitious. And this is the time to dial it back a little bit.
Yeah.
And to be very patient. I'm not just saying this because I need to deploy this thinking for me to keep healthy.
Yeah.
I like to think that if a person's going to get on with that sport, that they really do want to give it a fair chance to get to the place where they're running comfortably.
Yeah.
But that's what takes some time. So summarize, start off with some walking and intersperse it with a little bit of running. And something I found, I've even said this to my son. I said, geez, P, I said, I'm running so slowly,
Yeah.
but I'm actually running faster than somebody.
Yeah.
And invariably they're 25. So good on you, buddy.
That's true.
But start off with some walking. I mean, walking can be very cool.
I enjoy walking, especially in this new neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
There's a highway right there and you can see the sunset.
Quite.
It's very pretty.
Yeah, opens up to the west there.
Yeah.
But, get so that you can comfortably walk 6 hours a week. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I feel like that's a good place to end it.
After this podcast, make sure you go on a walk.
Yeah. And then
Start
study for your
walking.
midterms.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Gentlemen,
for your time, Ray.
Thank you for this.
Thanks.
What a
Cheers.
awesome experience. Thank you.
I hope you had a good time.